but I can have an effect on everybody. I am having an effect on everybody, just not the effect I want, or not the effect I should. Ultimately, we now know that we can affect the whole world. Godliness is becoming more real. The concealment of God in this world, the hiding of the Creator from his creation, it's not like it used to be. It's becoming more obvious, whether intellectually or instinctively or in whatever sense, we are sensing something. The truth and the reality of God and the Torah are just, let's say, less deniable than they used to be. It was so easy to dismiss it, particularly after the Holocaust. Be religious, serve God, observe all the commandments like my grandfather in Europe, who died in a gas chamber. Why would I want to do that? It was so justified not being observant. Where was God? Why do you even believe in him? That's what created a new mainstream, a new norm. It was normal to not be observant. Yes, I'm Jewish, but I don't do all those Jewish things. I'm a good person, but that's universal, not Jewish. There was a distaste for anything that was particularly Jewish, because that separated me, set me up, gave me an identity. And back in those days, painted a target on my back to be shot at. So I didn't want that. I want to be mainstream. And mainstream was non-observant, non-religious, non-believing. Okay, there's some validity to that. But you know what the alternative is? Not stepping out of the mainstream and going back to being different, but actually changing the mainstream. Don't step away. Be part of the mainstream. But why does mainstream have to be secular? Doesn't. Mainstream can be godly. In fact, that's our task, to make godliness mainstream, not extreme, not even different. Because if to be godly you have to be different, that means you haven't changed the world, because the mainstream is not godly. So what have you accomplished? You've achieved a personal victory. You have become more godly. But was that the extent of the mission or responsibility that God gives us? He wants us to make the world godly. And this was not possible in our grandparents' generation. They couldn't. At best, they could make themselves godly. And the proof of it is, they made themselves godly, and yet look at how ungodly the world was. World War II. But since then, the darkness kind of receded a little bit. A new light came into the world where, first of all, we can think big. And maybe that comes from trying to be mainstream. Mainstream thinks big. As secular as it is, it's cosmic. It thinks universe size, not parochial. Whatever the cause, the fact is we can think bigger now than before. And so we can take on a bigger role than before. Yes, I can change the world, not just myself. I can change my immediate world, the atmosphere at home. I can change the atmosphere. Not only at home, but at the country club, at the synagogue. In my community, I can change everybody. Directly, indirectly, more or less, but I can have an effect on everybody. I am having an effect on everybody, just not the effect I want, or not the effect I should. Ultimately, we now know that we can affect the whole world because thinking global has become mainstream. So, let's do a proper tshuva. Proper tshuva does not mean go off and become different, special, higher, holier, more religious. On the contrary, today tshuva means return God to his original position, master of the universe. It's been a long time since the universe identified its master. And there can only be one. We don't believe in Greek mythology. There's one master of the entire universe. We should know who that is by now. It's time. So today, when a person becomes more observant, we don't call the individual a Baal Tshuva. Because it's not about the individual. It's something about God. He's making himself a little more obvious. God is dawning on the human race. One person after another, we're catching on. So it's not we are becoming Baalei Tshuva, it's God is coming down to earth. God is becoming real. As God becomes real, godliness becomes more doable, more inspiring. So if I can do something godly today, I'm ready to do it. Not by changing myself and my life and my identity. No. If in fact this is God's world, I do it his way. God says you should make a living by the sweat of your brow. Okay. Tell me how. It's not like making a living is my project. God said, you're going to have to work and make a living. All right. Tell me how. God says you should get married and be monogamous. Tell me how. Tell me how. So it's God that is becoming real. We are not becoming more spiritual. That's not the direction we want to go. We want to make godliness more tangible, more physical, more mainstream life. To the point where, in the near future, not doing things the way God wants it done won't make sense to anybody at all. Anybody. If you're going to do it his way. Why? Because it's his idea. It's his idea to get married his way. It's his idea to raise children his way. It's his idea that human beings should work for a living. Do it his way. It's the only thing that makes any sense. It's just that until recently, we didn't recognize that it was his way. We thought it was just the things we need to do. And all he's doing is interfering and giving me restrictions. I need to make a living. He tells me I can't work on Shabbos. The new thinking is, I don't need to make a living. It's his idea that I do that. Animals don't go to college. They don't have to get a degree. They don't have to get a job. They don't have to be hired for a career. They go out and find something to eat. Well, why can't we? That's not God's plan for the human being. For the human being, by the sweat of your brow, you will make bread. Well, if it's his idea, do it his way. That would be real tshuva without making it an exception. So let's be careful in how we become more observant. It's not going off and starting something special for yourself and your community. That's not the right direction. Be mainstream. That's a good idea. But who says that mainstream has to be secular and that the mainstream dictates your behavior? You dictate the behavior of the mainstream. After all, mainstream is just made up of you and a couple of other people. You and a couple of people, and that's mainstream. All right, more than a few, more than a couple. But mainstream is made up of individuals. So why is every individual obeying the mainstream when the individuals are supposed to be creating the mainstream? Like the bad news industry. You don't have to believe the bad news. You have to create the news that you want the news to report. So let's take control of the world and make the whole world more godly. Will that earn you a title? Don't want titles. We want a better reality, not a specialized, unusual reality, the reality that is mainstream, that everybody can identify with. That reality should become more godly. That is a noble task. Let's do it. Do it, not just feel it. So make a resolution that's got some teeth to it. This is going to be different, not just my intentions. My charity activity is going to be different. Spell it out. How is it going to be different? When is that going to happen? How is that going to happen? Get a charity box. This is for everybody. Get a charity box. Make a charity box. Put in your coins every day at the end of the day, every day at the beginning of the day. That's specific. It's what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to do it. And that'll be the beginning of many improvements, many positive changes. You start with tefillin, you start with the Shabbos candles, something tangible that will guarantee a much more meaningful and purposeful year. And that's all we really need. A little more meaning, a little more purpose. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs, that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us. Take a look. Click the link below and see which of the three suits you best,